Hi, welcome to In Response, interviews with intriguing internalizers. My name's Mia Park, and I have the honor of introducing my Tai Chi teacher, Patrick Kelly. He is my Tai Chi teacher and is a longtime Tai Chi and spiritual teacher. Patrick was born and raised in New Zealand, but has studied all over the world and has students internationally. So I live in Chicago, Illinois, and study with students of Patrick there. However, I've also traveled to China and Europe to study with Patrick because he has schools and students there. Patrick has a couple books out. One that I highly recommend is called Infinite Tao because that gives you a lot of insight to Patrick's personal journey, looking for really solid, valid teachers and teachings. So if you want to learn more about Patrick the person and his journey, I recommend that book. But here you are live and in person. Hello.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like people to know about you?
No, you've pretty well summed it up, I think.
Okay, cool.
There's not very much it needs to be known. I think the questions will reveal more. Just ask it. You ask away.
Great. So can you help us understand what the outside world is for you, what that looks like for you?
The outside world, well, I think of the whole earth as one, and I try to move freely over the earth. That's why I've got students everywhere, students in America, students in... I travel wherever I can, and I think of the earth as one place, and I try to not get caught by the borders of the countries and the governments insisting that they have individual countries and so on. I don't especially believe in nationalism, and that you should be proud of your country or something else. I think you should be proud of the whole earth. And I think it's good when people can move freely over the whole earth. That's how it should really be. The earth's one place. That's my outside world.
Do you consider the earth as a living organism?
In one sense, yes. I consider that there's an intelligent being that manages the earth. But if you think of the dirt, that's like thinking of your finger as a intelligent, as an intelligent being. It's not really. It's just a part of your body. So the earth, as we see, is part of the body of an intelligent being.
That's great. Can you share with us what your internal response is, or how you engage internally with that outside world you just shared with us?
Engage internally with the outside world. Well, I think the outside world and the inner worlds exist simultaneously at all places. So as I move freely through the outside world, or attempt to move freely through the outside world, then I attempt to take care of whatever inner responsibility arises at that particular place where I am, and that will also determine where I go at any particular place. So there's some simple things like family, and I have 4 children. Sometimes I need to be places for those 4 children. My parents are dead, but there was a time when I needed to look after them. And then there's the students that I have, and wherever students sort of gather, then I feel some responsibility to move to that place for some time and do what I can. So at this stage, for the last 20 years, you might say, I move through the outside world. I'm in response to the inside world. I don't just move through the outside world because of the outside world. I move through the outside world in order to take care of the things of the inside world.
That sounds like great advice for someone.
Well, that's why I don't like restrictions on the outside world, because otherwise it restricts the response to what's needed from the inside.
So because this is August 2020 and we're dealing with a global health pandemic in the outside world and the pandemic for racial justice right now, what kind of internal response do you have to those major global events that people are going through?
Well, I personally think the present major event is just another example of the unbalance of the outer world. I think it's just a temporary and not overly major thing, so I don't overreact to it too much. I attempt to keep moving freely about in the outer world, to keep taking care of the things from the inner world. So I ignore as much as possible the overreactions of undeveloped people to the external and perceived difficulties.
So I could see how someone might think that was a strong statement or might judge you for that because there's so much fear of the pandemic out there. Do you have a response to people who may judge you that way?
Well, I'm not scared. I expect, if you live like I do, you expect to be judged by people who live in a different way. If people live their life in response to the external world, then they don't always they can't always understand, appreciate, and so consequently may attack or condemn somebody who lives in another way. And I think it's just part of being in the world and attempting to take your cues and your responsibilities from the internal world rather than the external world. So people lost in the external world, you'd expect them to, that's right, not understand, get angry, attempt to push you into their way of thinking. I just try to slip past them as softly as possible.
I think that's very encouraging to hear. I really appreciate how you just explained, like what you do. I heard you say that you slip past them as, I think you said, as gently as possible.
Right.
I really appreciate that because I think that there's so much action based on strong emotional feelings that people have. So I think that you responding that way to people who may judge you is a wonderful sign, a result of practicing. And I would think that people watching or just on your own, I think that people long to be able to respond that way, to slip past pressure with as much gentleness as possible in their individual lives. So can you maybe recommend or suggest to, say, the layman how they could possibly become that kind of person or have the fortitude to respond that way to life?
Sure. Well, of course, in a sense, because we've taken Tai Chi as one of the central practices, of our central internal practices, of course, this is the speciality of Tai Chi to yield to and neutralize, not to go against, not to push back, allow a certain pressure from the people, from just to yield a little bit to it, neutralize a little bit, and go on with your life. Not if you push back, then you get stuck with the reaction and you get involved in the thing. That's from looking at it from a Tai Chi point of view. Practically, what it requires is that in your deeper self, you have a certain strength. And if you have that strength, then the outer self doesn't need to be so hard and inflexible, because I can flex on the outside and the inside remains resiliently strong. There's no threat. So when I give way a little bit to whatever people are pushing from the outside, I don't feel any inner threat from that. And if you don't have that inner strength, then you will push back and try to hold your position and defend it, because there's weakness inside. If you don't, you get squashed. Outer life will squash you if you don't hold your position, unless you have something inside you that can't be squashed, like a strong resilience. And you can let the outside press on you and you'll just bounce back again. That's the way of looking at it.
That's great.